Hey guys, it's Matt. This is the next presentation of the series People Know Nothing, which is a demonstration that in general the masses know nothing or next to nothing about the most basic elements or pillars that constitute the society in which they live. This is a book chapter that's been reworked at least 10 times in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I've added several things, actually over the last 6 months, to this chapter. So even if you've read this chapter somewhat recently or heard the YouTube presentation, you can't really go over this information enough. It's that important. Knowing the back of the dollar bill cold is extremely important, especially in trying to convince anyone around you that the world is not exactly the place that's presented on television, on the evening news. And as a reminder, the first presentation of People Know Nothing was on Christmas, how millions of people will be running around in preparation of December 25th, thinking all of this is somehow about Jesus' birthday, when you can point to almost every bit of it, from the Yule log to kissing under the mistletoe to what is Santa Claus to fun songs like the 12 Days of Christmas. You can point to almost all of it and tie in its ancient either Saturnalia or pagan Western European tradition, all of which has nothing to do with Christianity. The second presentation of People Know Nothing was on the Statue of Liberty, how most people on the street will tell you it was a gift from France, and she represents American freedom and liberty and all the ideals that we hold dear as everybody's locked away and people can't leave their houses in San Francisco without being arrested. They'll tell you those sorts of things. When it wasn't a gift from France, the money had to be raised privately. It had nothing to do with government to government as a reward for America doing away with its slavery. It was put together privately by Freemasons in France who looked to put it in Egypt first before America as its second choice. Egypt couldn't pay for it, couldn't raise the funds. It was most of the funds, especially for the base, were raised privately in the United States. The United States was a second choice for the Statue of Liberty, and there are at least 10 direct and indirect sun god references, including in its pose, what it's holding and what it's doing, basically a reincarnation of the Colossus at Rhodes, the ancient, one of the 7 wonders of the world depiction of the ancient sun god Apollo or Helios. That leads us here to the third installment. What is that strange stuff all over the back of the dollar bill? And how many people on the street have ever stopped for 5 seconds to think about it, or to question it, or to inquire about it? Basically, no one has. How could money be a main focus, or for many, the main focus, for tens or hundreds of millions of people in this country, and almost nobody knows anything about the symbols on the back of the dollar bill? Someone would say, well, I know who the president is on the front, and I know some story about a cherry tree. Ain't that good enough? No, it ain't good enough. Most people think all that bizarre stuff on the back of the dollar was designed for reasons that have no bearing today, or worse, because some founding father thought it was cool looking. That's pretty much the best the Housewives of Atlanta audience can come up with. Maybe it had some meaning in the olden days, and it don't apply today. No, that's not the case either, and it's not pretty pictures. It's hardcore occult symbolism to the highest esoteric degree. Some would say it's some sort of energy magic, and what's on the back are actually runes. Now, this makes a lot more sense than any pedestrian explanation that the Housewives audience will come up with on the street, because money is this plane of existence's literal representation of energy. Money is the physical and literal representation of energy in this place where we live. One who has money can trade it for energy, whether that be a rub and tug down at Chinatown or having somebody mow your lawn for you while you relax with a Monster energy drink that's 90% vodka. Money stores energy. Energy is typically needed to be spent to acquire money. One converts into the other and vice versa. Now think about this. Likely 95% or more of people that you would stop on the street don't even know that what's on the back of the dollar bill in 2 circles is the Great American Seal. Maybe 98% don't know it's the Great American Seal. Somebody making an excuse, well, they never got a class on that. Well, it's printed there. It's printed on the back. It says the Great Seal, but people won't know that. They won't have stopped for 2 seconds to ever think about what's on the back of the dollar bill. Ask somebody to flip it over and ask them to tell you about the Great American Seal. Well, first inform them it's the Great American Seal, but then ask them about the symbolism, and what would they say again? They'd know nothing. Let that sink in. In each circle, it shows the front and the back, as I mentioned, of what's called the Great American Seal, designed shortly after 1776. But how is it possible we didn't even get a lesson about it in school? It's the Great American Seal. Did any teacher ever have mention the Great American Seal? We learned about the Unabomber, important stuff like that. Why is there an Egyptian pyramid with a glowing eye staring at you every time you hand it over to, say, the soft pretzel guy? And he hands you the soft pretzel back, and people are more concerned with, this is before CV, people are more concerned with, did he wash his hands? Because there ain't no porta potties out on his route. He pushes that cart around Philadelphia. But in terms of the symbolism on the back of the dollar, nobody cares about that. It's just, did he wash his hands? Okay, if what's in those two circles is the Great American Seal, then shouldn't it represent American values? That would make sense, right? Shouldn't it represent American history, heritage, ideas, something related to the founding, the Revolutionary War? What would you put inside something called the Great American Seal? For example, Canadian money has hockey on the back of one of their bills. That makes sense because hockey represents a big part of Canadian culture. Isn't that what you put in a seal? If you designed a crest for your family, think about a crest for your family. What would you put in it? Stuff related to your family, right? Would it include dinosaurs? Or you want to include the Motion Picture Association of America logo because you think it's neat? What the heck do those things have to do with your great-grandparents coming through Ellis Island or the story of your family? I'm sorry to dumb this down, but your family crest, of course, would have symbolism that reflects your actual family, or at least the values of your family. The Norway national anthem probably should not be the rhythms of Central Africa with Zulu beats. Do you understand? A glowing eye on an Egyptian pyramid is just plain weird. And it has age-old occult significance. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, why didn't they put things in the Great American Seal that have value and significance related to America? The point is, they did. You just don't understand it. What's there is a very important in terms of the history and heritage of them, not of you, of something most people don't understand, of something that most people were meant never to understand, of something that's hidden in the shadows, of something that is occult, simply means hidden. From the perspective of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, the people that really run this country, the ones that are actually served by Jared Kushner with his little serving tray, his tea and crimpets, from their perspective, okay, we proletariat, we, those listening to this, we, the great unwashed, the regular masses and the asses, we are not meant to understand the symbolism on the back of the dollar bill. The Great American Seal isn't designed for us. It's designed for them and their great work. The 1% of the 1% know exactly what that is. Doesn't that tell you something? Some people are listening to this who would be my adversary. They think, nobody understands it. Well, somebody understands that symbolism, right? And the other part of this, most people won't accept unless they've been looking into these sorts of things for many years, because a certain subset, if you make this presentation to someone that does not run in our circles, they'll be running to Wikipedia. Well, it says right here in Wikipedia, Matt, what this is. Oh, the Eye of Providence. And I'm going to tell you right now, and then I'll explain it to you, appealing to your common sense, that what is in official sources and Wikipedia as to what those symbols are is 100% wrong. Well, that's awfully arrogant. Nobody on YouTube is going to explain to me what it is, and I go to official sources and it's all a lie, it's all wrong. Yeah, right. Give me a chance. And have it appeal to your inner knowing, your inner tuning fork. Common sense should rule people. But today people are ruled by whatever little idiot box, like the Echo or the Alexa, the little idiot box will tell you what reality is, with a complete breakdown and abandonment of the common sense inside of them. So some of those people will want to argue with me about what I said just a minute ago. Who's this 1% of the 1% of the 1% that runs everything? It's like a conspiracy. I'll give you a simple explanation. We have thousands of these examples. I can't turn this into a 400-hour presentation. I'll give you one example that will appeal to your common sense, will blow everything Forbes and Fortune says about this family out of the water. Okay. Now, every so often or every year, the Forbes and Fortune, they'll look at the world's richest people, and we find the Rockefeller family as an entire family. Now is way down the list. The last time I looked at it was 4 or 5 years ago. And it had, I guess it was Fortune list of world's richest people or families. $11 billion net worth is what was presented 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe it's gone up a bit, down a bit. It doesn't matter. $11 billion associated with the name Rockefeller is an absolute joke, a 100% lie that is an insult to anybody that carries a degree of common sense. Let me explain why. Standard Oil, the breakup of John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil in 1911. We've all heard about it. The trust busters came in on behalf of the American people and broke it up. Now, it broke into a bunch of little companies nobody's ever heard of, like Exxon, Texaco, Chevron, Unocal, all the major oil companies that dominate world oil today was the breakup of Standard Oil in 1911. Now, John D. Rockefeller and the Rockefeller family didn't have those companies just snatched away. He had controlling interests in all those companies. John D. Rockefeller's net worth at about the time of the breakup, in today's dollars, roughly $300 to $350 billion. So if the Rockefeller family did nothing other than, this is simple math, did nothing other than reinvest the dividends, hold all the shares from 1911 through today, reinvest all the stock options, just sit on it. Do nothing but play croquet in the backyard. The net worth of the Rockefeller family would be over $1 trillion today. We're told these stories about Warren Buffett through the 70s and 80s and into the 90s just by making some insightful stock picks and buying and holding on to them. He's worth 50, 60, 70 billion dollars today. See, just bought and hold. What about buying and holding since 1911? Exxon, Chevron, Texaco, all the major oil companies, all the major refineries, all that split out from Standard Oil's breakup. Okay, we could go on and on. The net worth of Rockefeller couldn't possibly be $11 billion unless just perhaps it was a charitable offering. They allowed the institution that housed Rain Man to manage their money since 1911. Whoever was in the room next to Rain Man, down the hall, everybody had little problems. They said, you can manage $400 million, you can manage $2 billion. They just gave it up to Rain Man's roommates to manage. Either that or the Rockefellers missed every single trend that was ever presented and ability to make money when they had all the politicians in their pocket since 1911 and they know every bill that was going to be passed. Sure. The point of this subsegment is simple. Old money exists here. There are people here, families, those in the shadows who call the shots. Now, there's another exercise we could do for a family name called Rothschild, where you could probably put the net worth into the multiple trillions. This can be done over and over again. The point is there is a 1% of the 1% of the 1%, people that aren't on the Forbes and Fortune list who tell and call the shots, who manage the politicians. They understand, I assure you, the symbolism on the back of the dollar bill. We proletariat are not meant to understand that symbolism and not meant to understand the great American seal. Most people know more about what seal, the little thing with flippers, what seal will open for Shamu at SeaWorld. They know about that. A seal named Ernie's opening for Shamu. They know that. They won't know anything about the great American seal. The paper talisman with all the creepy runes and symbols on the front and back is then placed in the hands of millions and millions of real people and real souls who move the symbols around and pass it back and forth amongst themselves as a means of exchange. Now, if you don't think they find power in that, you don't understand how the world works. It's probably the reason that cash still exists. In, for lack of better words, what you would call an energy system. In an energy system, it's the movement of something that creates the power or creates the electricity. Things need to move. They need to rub against each other. A balloon to your hair, for example. A lot of other more sophisticated examples. An alternator needs the car engine on, and it needs the car to be moving for the battery to charge back up. Even a battery itself is chemicals coming together. It's just not one thing sitting by itself on a table can't produce energy. So you have this dollar bill with the runes and strange symbols moving back and forth. And of course, people like you and me don't understand exactly how that would create the energy that they actually use or feed from. But there's a lot of this in this world, I assure you, we don't necessarily understand. Okay, just if you don't like where this is going, abandon my way out theories as to what those symbols potentially are and are potentially used for. Forget all that. Just go right back to the basics. Obviously, there's no possible way a pyramid and a glowing eye represents anything we know of as American history or heritage. Explain that to me, please. Why are many of the words on the dollar bill in Latin? Didn't we speak English in 1776? What's the Latin for? You know, look at the bills around the world. I doubt the Chinese yuan references anything in Russian on their bill, or the Chinese renminbi has a little watermark of Joan of Arc to put off counterfeiters, just using other cultures onto their bill. No, why do we have Latin? Not we, the Corporation of the United States. If I could avoid using the bill, I would. I need to feed my belly. If this is supposed to be a melting pot for those seeking freedom, isn't that what the Statue of Liberty tells us? It's a melting pot here for people seeking freedom, and Lady Liberty welcomes them in. They come from all over the world. Well, why would the U.S. pay homage to the Latin of ancient Rome? Didn't those Romans have slaves? I'm no learned expert on it. I've seen a few movies, but I think they had a bunch of slaves in ancient Rome. I think the U.S. would try to avoid that, wouldn't you? Russell Crowe, they made a slave and put him in the arena. The original Spartacus, what is it, Crassus, or one of these noble lords took Tony Curtis as his slave and bath boy. You remember that in Spartacus? Come here, Antonitus, and prepare my bath. Antonitus, I enjoy both oysters and pearls, if you understand. Oysters and pearls. Oysters and snails. It means he likes men and women. Do you find it immoral, Antonitus, that I prefer both oysters and snails? Tony Curtis is looking at him like, whatever, dude. I just want to get the F out of here. Why use Latin on the bills when not one part of this country's founding has anything to do with Rome? Ah, but it does, Captain Ogren. Perhaps it is tied to Rome. Can I offer you whiskey, Captain Ogren? That's from The Last Samurai. Washington, D.C. pays tribute to Rome all over the place, so using Latin makes sense if you see that D.C. is paying tribute to Rome. We'll get to that. Everybody rolling their eyes. Conspiracy. Oh, we'll get to it. What the heck is Novus Ordo Seclorum? It's below the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. Why put that there? Well, it means New World Order or New Order of the Secular Age. Basically, New World Order. Now, conspiracy theorists all over the world are deemed nuts by their families for talking about a new world order, and it's right there on the back of the dollar bill. Oh, God, Jamie at Thanksgiving is going to talk about the new world order again. But it's right on the back of the dollar bill. Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Secular Age. No, that couldn't be what it means. Pass the potatoes. Okay, what about this one on the back of the dollar bill? It says in all caps, "In God we trust." Somebody listening to this, that's easy. It means we believe in God in the United States. Really? Is that what it means? That's dumbed down idiocracy. That's an explanation for the masses, not the occult explanation or what's really there. So what God? Why do people believe it must be the Christian God? Perhaps people just believe because they've heard their entire lives little stories about the U.S. being founded as a Christian nation. Even if that's so, even if that's 100% correct, all of the political correctness we've experienced over the last 30 years, let's say it does relate to fairy tales about the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation. How could "In God We Trust," if that's true, remain on the dollar? Aren't we supposed to have separation of church and state? Aren't they tearing out Civil War statues and removing the Confederate flag from every building in the South? All this political correctness going on for 30 years? All of these movements, powerful liberal lawyers, and they can't remove a line about God on the back of the dollar when they say it relates to the Christian God? And why not? Well, Matt, it's hard to reconfigure the dollar. You know, they reprint new versions to ward off counterfeiting like every few years. It's easy. Why is it written in all caps? It has meaning too. Now, every liberal group in the world, reading their Atlantic magazines in the bathtub would be suing the federal government since about 1980, probably since about 1960, to remove "In God We Trust." The lawsuits would be endless if it really related to the Christian God and was favoring a Christian God over other gods. Okay? It's that simple. And other groups, not just the liberal lawyers, other groups, the atheists, would be suing to remove any reference to God. Say, I don't care what God it is. There shouldn't be a reference to God. And the thing about it, there would be precedent for those lawsuits to be successful based on everything they've ever told us about this country. If anything we know of as the legal system, or what you know of as the legal system is real, any of these groups would have easily won their lawsuit. We've been told our whole lives with case precedent that religion has no place in government. What's it doing on the back of the dollar bill? Were we taught about separation of church and state since about second grade? I know separation of church and state's not in the Constitution. So what? Most law is case law. Most law is precedent. If there was no precedent for separation of church and state, then they wouldn't be tearing out the 10 Commandments in courthouses, right? What's really bizarre is, in general, "In God We Trust" on the dollar, it's like never discussed by anybody. It's never brought up. It's not even brought up on the Rachel Maddow show, a raging liberal that should be all offended that it's on the back of the dollar bill, unless it means something else. This is the whole point of this presentation. Wouldn't a leftist man-witch like Rachel Maddow be very upset about a God reference on the thing she uses every day to buy her hormone injections? Why is in caps "In God We Trust" a permanent fixture, decade after decade, on the money? Simple. Because most people, including me, have no idea what it really means. It's occult, esoteric, it's hidden, as is almost everything on the back of the dollar bill. What the masses can Wikipedia is not what really exists. And I'll be very honest to say, I don't know what it means. I wasn't in the back room with Jared as he was serving. They know. I'm on the side of the proletariat, of course. The masses, the ones that aren't supposed to know. But this presentation is called "People Know Nothing." And this one really should be called, well, Matt, you don't even know. I'm including myself, but people don't even care to know what that creepy stuff is on the back of the dollar bill. All I can prove is all of what Wikipedia says about it is completely false. We can speculate on what it really is. Most people don't even give a shit. They just will look at it in glancing as they pass it over to the vendor to get a soft pretzel. So "In God We Trust," I can tell you this, it's not the God of the Bible. Okay, it's not about Jesus or anything like that. I mean, I can tell you what it's not. We can speculate on what it is. Again, one more time, everything on the back of the dollar bill is called occult. That just means it's hidden from the masses. Of course, somebody, some high-level initiate somewhere, somebody at the top of the creepy pyramid knows exactly what it is. So it wants you thinking in a certain way about everything on the back of the dollar bill and will lead you into false narratives. It wants to put people in a box. "In God We Trust." Well, we have to pick one of the gods. And is it Vishnu, Krishna? Is it the God of the Bible? Is it Jesus? Is it Buddha? Well, don't think in a box. Why couldn't the God of this realm be money itself? "In God We Trust," right on the money. the God of this realm, a realm of materialism. In God we trust. The money itself, the energy of moving money around itself, that has to be on the table. It's just about picking a God. Or once we prove it has nothing to do with Christian God, then you have to look in other places. Money itself as the tie that binds a soul and spirit to this place. And knowing how they operate and knowing how they do business, you have to look at something that appears to be spiritual. Oh, in God we trust, very spiritual, religious, enlightening. You have to assume and apply the 179.5 degree principle that it's always the opposite. It's always inverted. Then it would be, nothing spiritual. They might mean money itself, something that ties you and roots you to this place through the lower chakras. See, the opposite of what you would expect is more likely to be the way they do business, of course, for those who have studied it. That's probably confusing to anybody new to this. And anybody new to this is, think of yourself as Kurt Russell, Jack Burton in Big Trouble, Little China, just a truck driver. He came across all that creepy shit in Chinatown. He says to Lo Pan, I don't get it. Lo Pan says,
"You were not put here on this earth to get it, Mr. Burton. Now I'll marry the girl with the green eyes."
I know the things I'm saying about what that is on the back of the dollar bill is very strange, and the fact that it doesn't line up with anything that you can find on Wikipedia will be used to discredit me, but don't turn off your common sense. For anybody who doesn't run in our circles who's not already convinced, write down when there's a blatant common sense violation regarding the back of the dollar bill, and you'll soon find there's a gigantic list. Yeah, why would In God We Trust be there when political correctness says there can't be anything associated with God with the state? Why would there be terms in Latin when ancient Rome had slaves? Why would there be a creepy Egyptian pyramid when that has nothing to do with U.S. history? Why would it say New World Order? You can make, the list will grow. The common sense violations list grows long quickly, and we're not even halfway done. To wrap up in caps, In God We Trust, many people I know who run in our circles will say that it simply refers to their God, Matt. Their God is Satan. Now, personally, again, I told you I don't know exactly what it means, but I found over and over again that the simple answer, just saying that's Satan, it doesn't adequately explain exactly what's going on or what we're up against. Okay, I don't accept that In God We Trust is their God, Satan. I don't see that. All right? I don't think it's just a little tribute to Satan. I don't think the blatant Satan references during the Super Bowl halftime show that are all over the place, I think that is somehow meant to mislead. I don't think they just put a blatant Satan worship as a halftime show. Lady Gaga or Katy Perry coming in as the Whore of Babylon, or Madonna as the Baphomet. When it's that obvious, it's not obvious. That's how they do business. For example, Saturn being assigned to Satan. It's too simple, in my opinion. It's meant to mislead. Let's continue the back of the bill. What is annuit coptis? It says in Latin, annuit coptis. If I'm pronouncing that right, and I don't care if I am or not. It's Latin for honor our endeavors. Whose friggin' endeavors? What endeavors? Why don't you list the endeavors? And why say it again in Latin? Why is there a glowing eyeball staring back at anybody who whips out $1 for another game of Keno? Again, this is where proper research sources matter, and there are very few proper research places to go in this area. If you research the eye on the back of the dollar bill, the first 2 pages of Google will be filled with articles on the Eye of Providence and other bullcrap, complete lies, absurdities, 100% made up to protect the real truth and keep this stuff, again, occult and hidden from the masses. If you look it up, you'll read ridiculous crap like this. The Eye of Providence, also known as the all-seeing Eye of God, symbolizes God watching over humanity. It symbolizes God. What God? It's from one website. Okay, that's a direct quote from a website. The Eye of Providence, also known as the all-seeing Eye of God, symbolizes God watching over humanity. Are you kidding me? Give me a break. How dumb and made up does that sound? One final time with the liberal lawyers going after anything that has to do with the Christian God. If Elmo was on the back of the dollar bill instead of In God We Trust, if Elmo was there, Elmo would have more staying power. Now, this does lead to a fascinating topic that nobody has the answer to, that we're not going to go here. I'm just going to float it out because few of us have even considered it. Well, hundreds and hundreds of liberal lawyer groups are not aware of who Jared serves in the back room with his creepy tea set. They don't know exactly the things that we're talking about here. They would believe it means the Christian God, per what Wikipedia says about the Eye of Providence. So they probably did start these lawsuits many, many times. Of course, they weren't successful in ever removing In God We Trust because there it still remains. Now, but you'd wonder what the process was and how this happened. No group ever tried to remove it, whether it be through the legal system or through less formal means. And what did they run into? What was the response from the Treasury, for example? It is very interesting to think how many times liberal groups tried to go after the fact that the bill references God when they believe it's the Christian God, and what the response was. Did it just go nowhere? Did they actually get a response saying it's not who you think? I don't know. It's just fascinating to think about. I just have to pause for a second because there's a dissenter somewhere out there in his bathtub who wants to scream at me something like this. Wait a second. Are you saying we're being intentionally lied to? These websites tell us about the all-seeing eye of providence. It's all a lie, are you saying? And it talks about the importance of the U.S. being in the Christian God's good graces by putting it on the dollar bill. It's all a lie. No matter what reference source I go to in the mass media, it's all a lie. Of course, that's what I'm saying. I know that's hard to comprehend, but where are they getting their information? They're all ultimately, the river all leads back to the same source. All the tributaries lead back to the same source. It only has to be put out incorrectly in one spot for all the popular forms of research like Wikipedia to pick up the bullshit story. Of course I'm saying it's a lie. Now, as this presentation goes on, a fork in the road is being carved. There's a list of bullet points being outlined here. And somebody listening will do one of two things. One that practices cognitive dissidence, who just has to hold on to their worldview, and everything on Anderson Cooper 360 and Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room has to be completely real, will say, well, now this joker making this presentation has outlined 5 things. And in all 5 areas, Wikipedia and the World Book Encyclopedia and CNN and all these trusted sources say something completely different than what he's saying. Or if he doesn't know, he's saying what trusted sources is saying is a lie. And that can't be. How could he have a whole list of things where the traditional outlets of research saying something completely different, or he's saying it's false? That just can't be right. I'm going to turn this guy off. Okay? Of course, you could let that overcome your cognitive dissonance, because how could a joker like me making this presentation have a whole list of things that's different than what mainstream media says? Or you can do something else, something that's along the lines of common sense. You can forget what the mainstream research is saying, and you can say, yes, what he is listing in this presentation violates common sense. Why would there be an Egyptian pyramid on the back of the dollar bill? Why is In God We Trust allowed to remain when separation of church and state, the lawyers would have taken that out 40 years ago? I'm asking you to make a list of common sense violations. And your common sense, inner truth, inner knowing, that should be more valuable to you than what Anderson Cooper says on the 360 show or whatever Aaron Burnett's trying to present out front. Okay, so we have this glowing eye inside an Egyptian pyramid that Wikipedia will tell you is the Eye of Providence. Well, let me get this straight. Other than in a Monty Python film somewhere, the Christian God has never, ever been depicted as a glowing eye. Show me somewhere where the Christian God is depicted as a glowing eye, but I'm told that's the eye of God, according to a government that's not supposed to show any religious preference. Right. If you look at the eye atop the Egyptian pyramid on the back of the dollar bill, it's a man's eye with an eyebrow. Well, that's God? It's a man's eye with an eyebrow. What? Who would depict God like that? Now, I don't think you need 4 years of divinity school to understand no one anywhere in the world has depicted God that way, as an eye with an eyebrow. At least they didn't eyeshadow God's eyebrow with eyeliner in support of transgender movements. Therefore, and quite obviously, it's not the eye of God, or at least the God that you think. It's not what they say it is. It's something else. Well, what is it then? Oh, you don't know? Well, then you're discredited. I didn't say I know it all. I said, in this area, people know nothing. And I'm one of those people. Something they know about. Whoever they are. Those that say the Rockefellers are worth $11 billion when they're worth probably, the 11 is probably 1.1 trillion. Of course, they would be worth that, just banking the money and reinvesting the dividends and taking the stock splits and putting it back in the companies, just playing croquet in the backyard. They understand what all the symbolism is. You and I are called the profane, the great unwashed. Somebody somewhere in their bathtub is getting unruly. Well, get to the point then, you asshole. You keep saying all this stuff and what it's not. Well, what is it? What do you know anything? Well, I know a few things, but in terms of all the creepy symbolism on the back of the dollar bill, again, I can only speculate. And I've been doing hardcore research in this area for almost 10 years. I can give you a number of possibilities, but I don't know for sure. If somebody claims they have it all figured out, somebody in the truth community claims they have it all figured out and knows everything about the back of the dollar bill, I don't buy it. But somebody that claims they have it all figured out doesn't have any of it figured out. But I can speculate. Before we do, just know that the eye symbol, like all the symbols they get their greasy, grimy little hands on, the eye symbol, even the all-seeing eye, has been in other uses or can be very positive, going back thousands of years. So there are certain truth channels that use the eye. I wouldn't use it, but I can't get on them for it because, as usual, this system has taken good symbols and corrupted them, with the most obvious example and the easiest thing to see is the swastika. Oh my gosh, you can never have a swastika on anything. When it was one of the most positive, wonderful symbols the world has ever known, going back thousands of years, they've taken it and completely corrupted it on purpose. They assign it to a very bad thing and a very bad meaning, so people will never use it again. So good people can never benefit from it again, right? So the eye symbols going back in many cultures is a great thing. It's been tied to the divine sight, somebody opening up their pineal gland, for example. Third eye, for example, relates to that. Again, they've hijacked all that was once good. The eye on the back of the dollar bill is now closely associated with what's called the evil eye. It's an eye of desire, greed, empire. It's depicted in the traditional symbol for fire inside the pyramid or the triangle, but the top is broken off and the capstone is isolated or separate from the other part. The all-seeing eye is linked to many things in how it seems to be used in the back of the dollar bill. It relates back to the eye of Horus, the Egyptian god Horus, son of Isis and Osiris. And of course, that's keeps being presented over and over again in a creepy way through mass media and Katy Perry and things like that. It's also been tied to Lucifer. Here we go again. But you can't ignore that. It's also been tied to Lucifer. It's often associated with Sirius. It's Sirius, the main star, or the star that dominates the astrology of what Robert Langdon would call the Illuminati in Angels and Demons or the Da Vinci Code. Sirius is the dog star, which is God spelled backwards. Now, who's God? Their God. What it is exactly, we don't know. Christians will be upset with me now. Fine. Okay, if you think it's simply Satan or Lucifer and that it's that simple, I don't. I don't think when it seems to be that simple, I've told you, I don't see it that way. There's something else that's in the equation here. Okay, they're setting themselves up in a too obvious of a way to make it, it's just all about Satan and Lucifer. Okay, we disagree. Again, we have a lot more in common than in areas where we disagree. Of course, a Christian would say it's absolutely related to Satan or Lucifer. I'll give you that. But again, back to what I was saying, the star, the dog star, God spelled backwards, Sirius, Sarius, dominates their astrology. And for those rolling their eyes at astrology, these 1% of the 1% of the 1% that say the Rockefellers are worth $11 billion when they're probably worth $1.1 trillion and pull the strings on all big corporations and politicians, they do everything by the stars. Everything. Right? Sirius dominates their astrology. Is the eye related to Sirius? Potentially. It's also interesting that the most famous aspect of the planet Jupiter, the planet that dominates their astrology, is the red eye, the red spot of Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter dominates their astrology along with Mercury. And what does Jupiter have on it? A big red eye. Is it related somehow? I think it is somehow. I don't know exactly how. But Jupiter and Mercury, I agree with Levitt, that is where they place their chips. Not on Saturn. I do believe Levitt is right about this. If you really stare at a dollar bill closely, it's really hard to determine if the creepy eye on the back is a left eye or a right eye. It's really hard to determine, but I've looked at it long enough where I believe it's a left eye. The eyebrow kind of tells you, the way the eyebrow falls off, that it's a left eye. You have Lisa Left Eye Lopez comes to mind from the 80s group TLC. Do you think Lisa Left Eye Lopez, she just chose that name for fun? It was given to her, of course. Of course it was. Now, this could be why the puppet Hollywood stars, like George Clooney's a star. Why do you think they even call them stars? Because of the astrology. It's all about the stars. They do everything by the stars. They all pose for pictures covering the right eye, right? Search Bono, right eye covering. Even Tom Brady has pictures where he covers the right eye. Pretty much, probably every star has a picture where they've posed covering the right eye. The left eye is open and watching. Okay, there seems to be a left eye in the creepy pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. So in the stars covering the right eye, the left eye is open and watching. Is that open left eye representing the eye on the back of the dollar bill? Now, there are other possible theories, with none being too strange to ever be taken off the table. In other words, if your theory seems reasonable and makes sense, it's probably not correct. If it's way out there and you have a weird ass crazy theory about the stuff on the back of the dollar bill, you'll be closer to the truth, because that's how the creepy bastards do business. The creepier, the better, in terms of the chance of it being right. For example, I'll throw one out. Here's one that I came up with. I don't know if it's right or not, but it's certainly worth being put on the table. Right eye, R-I-G-H-T, your right hand, your left eye, right eye, E-Y-E. How does that read? It reads like right eye, or the letter I, or, I myself. Right eye. And how does that read? Correct eye, the correct eye. So you have right eye easily reads as the correct eye. You understand? Right versus wrong, the correct eye. So then we get the correct eye, not E-Y-E, the correct eye. It's not hard to bridge this to the correct self. The correct self. So we know the goal of these controlling creeps is to present a reality that will cover the right or correct you. They present a reality that covers up or hides the right or correct I or correct you. It seems the entire society is to get people to think they are something other than their true self. In understanding this reality, always consider the way words and phrases sound, not just the meaning of how the words are written. Homophones, for example, how things sound can be just as important as how these creeps do business. So I believe in the word definition, the definition of a word. Definition, you could have deaf Phoenician. A deaf, can't hear Phoenician, the ancient Phoenicians. Now, this is not that strange if you understand the ancient Phoenician role and the historical developments of how they were related, how they inserted their influence on language. Television, it's there for a reason. It tells a lie to your vision. Always sound things out for alternative meanings and homophones, things like that. As a reminder, this presentation is people, the masses, know nothing about what should be the most important things in their life. And let's continue with the dollar bill. The dollar bill is loaded up with a whole lot more symbolism than what little we've talked about so far in the Great Seal of the United States. Its 13 code is everywhere on the back of the dollar bill. The number 13 is coded all over the place. Now, the average man, dummy, average woman, dummy on the street will say it has to do with the 13 colonies. That's a For Dummies book. The eagle. Oh, the eagle, that's American on the back of the dollar bill. No, it likely represents the phoenix, the mythical phoenix, another Egyptian reference. If it was just half of it on fire rising up from the ashes, well, that would be a little too obvious. So they present an eagle. But the eagle or phoenix holds 13 arrows. There are 13 leaves in the olive branch, 13 berries. There are 13 stripes on the shield. There are 13 letters in E pluribus unum. From many comes one. From two towers comes one. 13 layers in the pyramid. There are 13 stars above the eagle's head. And when you draw lines through all those stars, it makes both a cube and the Star of David. Even most Israelis today have no idea what the symbol on their own flag really means. Nobody understands the symbolism of what their own governments are using. And that is not even mentioning the Star of David being alchemical fire combined with the sign for water. Everybody gets fed these lies. No country is immune. Why the capstone of the pyramid is separate from the lower part of the pyramid is also highly significant. Again, people will come and say they're so sure what this means. If they're so sure, to me, they should not be listened to. The wise man says we don't really know what the intentions were from the creeps that Jared Kushner serves. The theories about the separate capstone, the capstone being separate from the lower part, it ranged from, quote, the elite, the 1% of the 1%, showing how separate and above they are from the lower levels where the masses reside. Those who have achieved an enlightened state and understand how the world really works and pull reality buttons and levers are illuminated, so the glowing eye, like the eye of Sauron, is separate and looking down on all us little golems and schmeagles. So you have this enlightened class or caste, and then you have all the people that serve that class. You have the guy that just serves the fries to, remember that Michael Bolton type asshole from Good Will Hunting and the Harvard Bar, who thought he was so smart. He was going on the way to a skiing trip. And he said to Good Will Hunting, he says, "You're going to be serving me fries. You got a $50,000 education you could have got for $1.50 a late charge at the public library, but the guy serving, according to this 1%, they're not enlightened, and the capstone is separate from his broke ass." One has to wonder, though, if you really think about it, well, George Bush would be in that top part of the pyramid, right? George Bush went through Skull and Bones. He played the role as president, but look at that thing. How enlightened is that dumbass? So if George Bush is in the top of the pyramid, I wouldn't be so proud of yourselves. I don't maybe they'd say, well, he played an actor role. He's not really part of what the top of the capstone of the pyramid represents. And I would hope George Bush isn't, because he's too dumb. So back to the 13 number being all over the back of the dollar bill, coded. How many places? Was it 7 or 8 places? The 13? Go to traditional research sources again. And what's it going to tell you? It's going to tell you total bullcrap. It's going to tell you all the 13s coded all over the place references the 13 original colonies. Are you kidding me? I mean, who can't see through this bullcrap? If it's a dumbed down explanation for the masses, then it tells you it's not true to do with the 13 colonies. If I had to guess, I mean, the answer is going to be anything but the dumbed down answer of the 13 colonies. If somebody says, well, maybe, Matt, it has to do with why Friday the 13th has significance and the occult meaning of 13 tied to Friday the 13th, which was when hundreds of years ago the Pope and the Vatican had the Templars killed on Friday the 13th. If anybody says it may relate more to that, well, at least you're looking in the right place. To me, that story is too much fairy tale. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I don't buy these YouTube videos talk about this huge rivalry between the Vatican and the Templars or certain secret societies. I don't see it. Well, have you been serving with Jared? No. But I don't see it, okay? To me, they're all working together. So I don't buy fairy tale stories in general. About Friday the 13th became so legendary because that's when the Pope killed all the Templars. I don't buy it. Do I know anything about it? No. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about things I don't know. But in general, I'm allowed to say this because I've studied dark reality for 10 years. When the story is like so perfect fairy tale given out to the masses, no, I don't buy it. All right? To me, it's very simple. We don't have to have all the answers other than the basics. And the basics is very simple in this case, why the 13 is all over the back of the dollar bill. Certain occult numbers have power. Now, for anybody new, I don't have 10 hours to explain how we get there. Do I know how to use the occult numbers for power and magic myself? No, but I know they have power. 13 is one of these grand occult numbers. They know it has power, they know how to use it, and they benefit from it. It's that simple. Anybody says, well, how do they benefit from it? Tell me the end of the story. Show me. I can't. But I'm telling you this is what it is. There's a magic going on in the back of the dollar bill. These are runes, occult numbers. How it generates energy for them or what exactly it does, I don't know. But I know enough to point at Wikipedia and say it's complete bullshit. Now, if anybody's barking at this video from their bathtub, they would be right in saying this. Well, tell me, who knows? You're talking about what all this stuff represents. Well, somebody knows. Who knows? Well, this is where you get into that conversation about secret societies. I'm no initiate. I never knocked on the door of no lodge. But obviously, these secret societies exist. All right, they exist today, and they're not Al Bundy's No Ma'am Club just to get away from their wives, a place where they can go drink, a place they can go dress up. There's a reason these secret societies exist all over the world, and names way beyond Freemasons and Skull and Bones and the names you've heard of. So these people at certain levels are the ones you're getting into the area where they understand what the stuff is on the back of the dollar bill. Everybody in our circle talks about the Freemasons and they talk about Skull and Bones, but there's a lot of other of these secret societies that are lesser known, but likely just as understanding of what's on the back of the dollar bill and influential in terms of what politicians do and what corporations do. You know, these names controlled kings and controlled popes back through hundreds of years. Not just Freemasons and Skull and Bones. There's Rosicrucians, who Alex Jones himself has basically admitted to being that by saying, all my family was Rosicrucian. Well, he's probably saying I'm Rosicrucian. I don't know exactly what that means. I'm probably not even pronouncing it right. I'm not in any of this stuff, nor do I care to be. But you also have this Knights of Malta. You have something called OTO, which was associated with Aleister Crowley. Golden Dawn, Priory of Sion, is supposedly still exists. Yes, as mentioned in the Da Vinci Code, same thing. Opus Dei, yes, also mentioned in the Da Vinci Code, likely still exists. Druids, likely still exists. Golden Cross, Bilderberg Group, is that a standalone like the others we've mentioned, or do others come to Bilderberg for them? I don't know. It could be both. It could be either. There's the Hellfire Club, the Knights Templars. Knights Templar is a path through Freemasonry. Some even say the Illuminati itself, which in our circles would describe as a catch-all for all of these groups. Some say it's a unique secret society that is not a catch-all. Okay? Some say that, and I would typically agree with this because I studied the way, I would just say, whoever pulls the strings, I study how they do business. When it's presented in a simple fashion, it's almost never the case. So those who research truth see that certain, Freemasonry, for example, 33rd degree. Well, it's likely that's what they present the profane. There's likely many, many higher degrees. Mike Williams of Sage of Quay talk about there likely being up to 66 degrees. And that does make sense because whatever it's presented as, hey, it's this simple, it's not that simple. What did I find out the other day? Webster, little Webster, who was in the TV show from the mid '80s, little Webster. What's his name? Emmanuel Lewis. He's a 33rd degree Freemason. So yeah, there are likely degrees way higher, and a whole bunch of stuff going on that that's just not put out for the masses to chew on. If you spend an hour researching a man named Adam Weishaupt, again, this is the name put out front to all of us. So whenever it keeps being served up, they want it to keep being served up. But, there's a truth in it. What a coincidence. Adam Weishaupt took the Bavarian Illuminati and I guess brought it to North America. What a coincidence that he started his great work in 1776. The American Revolution, Ben Franklin, 1776, and basically the same time when Adam Weishaupt starting or extending the Bavarian Illuminati into the United States or whatever he did, also 1776. It's not a coincidence. I think we're meant to understand that and apply truth in it and say, well, maybe what went down in 1776 is not what the history books say. And that's certainly what it looks like now. Right? Nothing is a coincidence. But all of the speculation by me is just a speculation by somebody in the great unwashed, me. I have no understanding of these particulars, nor do I want any more information than what I care to ponder. So what's the point of this subsection reminding people about secret societies in the middle of a conversation about the back of the dollar bill? Well, we know with 100% certainty the leaders of these groups, and the groups like I just mentioned, they ran the world centuries ago. We know that with 100% certainty. Controlled kings, controlled popes, influenced popes, etc., etc. So why would anybody think anything's changed? Well, that was the olden days, Matt. Well, they had the power. Why would it have changed? Your first inclination is to think, well, that can't be true in modern society, the power they held hundreds of years ago. Now it's just guys getting together in Al Bundy's No Ma'am Club. They're just ways to get away from their wives, so like Kiwanis Club. And, well, are they? This is Matt, you're missing the point. 1776 ushered in a whole new area. This is a democracy. Men and women are elected fair and square to serve the people. The time of these strong-arm tactics of secret societies are over. Yeah, sure. Morons, absolute morons like Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton, they got in on their own merit. Yeah, they just were so smart, so talented. I mean, you could even, if somebody that would say Bill Clinton had a degree of charisma and could run for president, maybe, but how did Jimmy Carter get in? How'd that happen? if these people aren't placed there by these very secret societies. I'm only going to say this once. I never had sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. He's lying the whole time. Then he'll try to ask you to explain what the meaning of the word is as a dropping of an ISIS. Oh, come on, Bill. Go back to Arkansas to run your locations of sex shops. To think that the massive power of these societies just went away after 1776, that's incredibly naive. What is most coveted by men in the world, and always has been the most coveted by men for all time in the history of the world, what is their drug of choice? The love of power. Nothing comes close. If you forgot that, watch Scarface. That's pretty much a representation of everybody that tries to claw over people to get to the top rungs of power, what they're willing to go through. Go watch Scarface again. That's pretty accurate. You know what I'm talking about, you cockroach. You know what a hassa is, Frank? It's a pig that don't fly straight. Tony Montana is not just a story. There's about a few million people that are willing to go to the same lengths to claw their way up to the highest level of power. And their primary mechanism that the real sickos use, more than the mechanism of organized crime and drugs and the mob and all that, they will use government. Government and the power of government attracts the same type. And people still are convinced they're just looking out for you. They just love you. They care about your health. You stay home. They care about your health. They don't care about power. They just care for you. So back to who really runs things here. The secret societies, many names I've missed. It doesn't matter. There's a group in the shadows. That's clear. It's obvious. Jimmy Carter didn't get himself elected, that moron. Bill Clinton didn't get himself elected by himself. Strings were pulled. A little sock puppet, a Kenyan hybrid Barack Obama. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Didn't have anything on his resume. Strings are pulled at the highest of levels. I mean, it's obvious. We know they controlled, or a certain subset, even if I'm getting the names wrong, controlled popes, kings, and controlled everything for maybe not 1,000 years, maybe thousands. Who knows? What do you think happened? A century ago, each head of each secret society called a meeting. They called a meeting of the No Ma'am Club, and something like this was said at each of the meetings. Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for coming today. Just settle down. Now, I know you're missing, remember the time period, guys, here, this would have happened a long time ago because we now have freedom and free elections. I know you're all missing your favorite Al Jolson radio programs now, so I appreciate you being here. But as you know, we secret societies have had a great time running the world for centuries. But I have to say, our time is over, don't you think? Our time is over, and the heads of the other societies agree with me. In light of this age of free elections and free peoples, we should disband. All the power we've had over the eons, we should disband and walk away from the power that our forefathers built for us over 2 millennia. It was nice being in control of absolutely everything, but let's turn the reins over to the common man going forward. It's that little bastard's time to shine, don't you think? Now, some of you in the audience, you might actually enjoy retail jobs, but you'll dread the Christmas season. So you talk to the average guy on the street, and they'll acknowledge that these societies existed going back hundreds of years, and they did have incredible power. And they'll point to the Knights Templar in the movie Kingdom of Heaven and say how absolutely real it was, and they'll believe in the Da Vinci Code. But see, at some point, then how did they lose the power? Did they just have that meeting and disband? Like the mock situation I just brought forth, it would have never gone away, the power. It just went into the shadows. It's so obvious, but the people around us can't see it. Would somebody holding the power of, say, Darth Vader just one day get up out of his little, what did he live in, a little pod or something, and just say, I've had enough. I've had enough ruling the galaxy. I don't want to do this. I want a little R&R. I want to see and do. I want to meet interesting things and be with interesting people. And he just said, do I have any heirs anywhere? Yeah, there's you have a kid named Luke who's on Tatooine. Well, go jump to light speed. Let's go. And he just, came out and handed the scepter of the galaxy to Luke on Tatooine because he just had enough of the power. He didn't need it anymore and he wanted to relax. Do they ever do that? No, because they're all 90-something still in their positions. George Soros will never say, I've had enough of destroying economies. I'm going to go take up croquet. And Warren Buffett never leaves his job. But Bill Gates will always run around pushing vaccines. It's two things. That one, that is a love of power, but also once they get into a certain part under the dragon's wing, like the real armpit under the dragon's wing, then they really can't get out or give it up, it seems, either. Darth Vader ain't going to just say he's had enough someday and try to hand it off to Luke. He says to Luke he's going to go off and get some Jamar Rajon. What was that on Planet Risa, where Picard was tricked into going to the planet Risa for a much-needed vacation, and he was told to say he wants Jamar Rajon, which is like the kinkiest sex available or whatever. We know it didn't happen. The ancient power didn't disband, because you can still see the secret societies in influential positions. All the astronauts pose with their Freemason rings. What an incredible coincidence. We've all heard this 1,000 times. 2004, Skull and Bones, John Kerry. Skull and Bones, George Bush. Remember from Romeo and Juliet? Juliet said, "What's in a name?" Would a rose by any other name smell as sweet? What do they call these things? Secret societies? Secret? Voodoo economics? Blank society? It's secret for a reason. A society by any other name wouldn't smell the same, but it wouldn't control governments and central banks either. The people who really run things, and that's not presidents, don't give themselves away by running around with their own personal coat of arms and their 800-year-old secret society symbols engraved into their ties. Who Theresa May, that thing, who she answered to, okay, she's not going to wear on her lapel in a pin, most likely, the way somebody around the mall parades around with the Nike logo of Hermes on their chest, proud to wear it. We simply don't recognize these secret society affiliations. First of all, it's called secret for a reason. We don't recognize the affiliations in who we see every day in positions of power, but they likely exist. Now, every once in a while, the masses get a story that they're meant to latch on to. That's why the truth community has seen the interview about Skull and Bones, John Kerry, George Bush. We've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times, and it was meant to be put out so we'd see it hundreds and hundreds of times and point to it as Skull and Bones, because the real message to the subconscious is, that's the only case where a secret society member of the same secret society was running for president against the other. And it must be very rare, because we haven't seen anything like that happen to John Kerry to George Bush for like 20 years or so. So the subliminal message is, that's very rare. This isn't happening all the time. But it is happening all the time. The commoners being aware of the affiliations of the people who run the world is rare, if you see the difference. So those in the shadows run the world. They run politics. They run the corporations. And every once in a while, to make it all look real and believable, they let someone in who has not been initiated into their same circles to serve them coffee and play their part in the grand script here. Every once in a while, Obama types are allowed in office, so people believe the system is real. First and foremost, the people have to be convinced it's all for real. Obama types are let in. These Cinderella stories are all scripted. Remember that total unknown white geeky guy who won that Senate seat in Texas, and then he just missed being a nominee or the nominee for the Republican for president? That jackass is called Ted Cruz. But then when we look closely, he's just a Cinderella story. Popped up on the Glenn Beck show one day with his cowboy boots, and anybody can be senator. Then we look closely at Ted the Cruz, And then we find, his wife, she has ties, ex-Goldman Sachs, and she worked for the Council on Foreign Relations. Oh, what a coincidence. What a coincidence. There's a long table where things on this earth are decided. The creepy table, a Goldman Sachs is there, and the CFR is there as well. They have a main seat at the main creepy table, all related through Ted Cruz's wife. What a coincidence. He just was this dark horse who won this Senate seat, took the world by storm in his cowboy boots. It's all a script. Everybody at that level is connected. These aren't one-off coincidences. George Carlin says, we've heard a million times, but I talk about it a little bit differently. He says, there's a club and you ain't in it. Now, I changed it. He said it's a big club. I changed it to there's a club and you ain't in it. The club ain't big from a member's perspective. George Carlin said it's a big club. It's not a big club. It's extremely tiny. The tiny little group of 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1% that runs the world and pulls the strings that's in the shadows is a tiny little group. George Carlin wasn't, he's working for us. No, he wasn't working for us. He's promoting exactly what they want you to believe. George Carlin wasn't working on our side. Nobody would ever get to that position if they were. He was probably allowed to say big. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Oh, George Carlin's working on our side. He's telling us how the world really works. Yeah, but at its root level, it's a deception. Big is a deception because of how most people interpret big as meaning many members. Oh, maybe I could be in it. On the face of it, big more likely means a lot of square footage, and marble floors. All right? It ain't a big club of people. Okay? That would imply somebody like you could be in it someday, or me could be in it someday. We can't, nor would we want to be at this point after all that we've learned. But the highest level is a tiny, tiny group. I see what George Carlin put out as a deception. Not working for us or helping us. Oh, that George Carlin was a good guy. Come on, wake up. Oh, my mama told me anybody could be president of the United States. My mama told me I could be president of the United States if we work hard enough. If you're like over 50 years old, your parents told you if you work hard enough, you could be president of the United States. I think probably if you're under age 30, your parents probably didn't say that to you, but probably like subliminally or subconsciously they know that was complete fantasy, but they told us that. If you're over age 45, a lot of parents told us that. My mom told, you work hard enough. Now, believe what you want. If there's still anybody out there screaming at me from their bathtub, believe what you want in terms of that naive notion of what this country, what people want it to be versus what it really is. If you pay attention and look beyond the rosy worldviews constructed for you, the people of these societies still run the world. If you were elected president, it would be because they allowed you to be elected president. And then you would carry forth their age-old agenda. That's why the trajectory of government, basically the path it goes, never changes, no matter what party gets in. In general, do wars ever stop when one party gets in or the other? The constant involvement in the affairs of others, sending troops abroad. George Bush, Iraq and Afghanistan. Barack Obama, 8 years, stayed in there. Is anybody going to try to tell me about a withdrawal or whatever? They went right back in. And it was all, nobody withdrew from anywhere, okay? I don't care what the news says. Today, then Trump, still in Iraq, still in Afghanistan. Nothing ever changes. And people believe these elections are real. You would see a change in government if things were real. I mean, my goodness, how stupid are people? I know I'm not talking to the people generally listening to this. I'm hoping this escapes to somebody that will take their head out of their ass. When a president chosen to win the Nobel Peace Prize gets elected, the Barack Obama SpongeBob Kenyan hybrid, he gets elected. And shortly after he gets elected, because that was completely legitimate, he had nothing on his resume, he wins the Nobel Peace Prize. What happens? War and the involvement of the military in countries abroad actually increased. Well, why did he get the Nobel Peace Prize? Good point. Who would have guessed the little Obama SpongeBob Kenyan hybrid? He was the biggest warmonger president of all. And he got the Nobel Prize. No, he wasn't. He simply played a part for much bigger and larger interests. These people are actors. They don't decide anything. One party gets in over the other. Does the size of government ever decrease? Is spending ever placed under control when the Republicans get in, like they demand during their campaign? Isn't that what Republicans are supposed to do? Isn't that what conservatism is all about? Oh, they want to do that, Matt, and they would do it, except when they get in, amazingly, they're blocked by Democrats. That's why, oh, he's blocked from doing it. Oh, yeah, that's a nice, convenient excuse that they serve up to the masses over and over, and people keep buying it decade after decade. Oh, they want to do all this, but they're blocked by the nasty characters on the other side. Nothing is blocked. That's a cooked-up story, so people believe this is all real. How is anything blocked if Democrats, in many cases, controlled all three parts under Obama, and in many cases, the Republicans had control of all three parts under the initial Trump administration? And there's been other instances where they controlled all three parts. But the excuse makers on each side will still say they're blocked. Well, how? Nobody ever does anything they promise, and amazingly, nobody ever holds them accountable. Are all your freedoms, when the liberals get in, are all your freedoms suddenly restored when they have power? Or do you find there are even more laws, more regulations, more code, more ordinance, more kids who can't legally sell lemonade in their lemonade stands? So when mothers tell their sons and daughters, oh, you can be president someday, I'm sorry, they're not telling the truth. Telling your dwarf son he can someday take over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record for centers in the NBA is good parenting compared to saying your kids can be president. Oh, how the Obama sock puppet perpetuated the fantasy that anybody can become president. If the president of the United States between 2008 and 2016 was literally a cardboard cutout, the president was literally a piece of cardboard, a cardboard cutout like they put in stadiums now to make it seem like they're fans, and you had a plastic stand that propped up the cardboard cutout. If that was actually president, the cardboard image would have made more decisions that of any importance than Obama did. Okay? That's how much of a joke puppet Obama was. Not that I'm implying any president has power. They don't. Some have a little bit more than other. George H.W. Bush is involved in these societies. He was the head of the CIA. He had, of course, more decision-making power than some of these pure actors like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Yes, sorry, Q people. Now, Michelle in the Obama administration, Michael, made more decisions because as first demi-boy, she was allowed to do a lot of things. She redecorated the White House. That was a decision. She decided to put Kobe beef on the plate for the Japanese prime minister when he came in. These are real decisions, much more than Obama ever did. All he did was play with Matchbox cars in the Oval Office, and the Matchbox cars that George W. Bush left behind. He didn't do anything either. I don't care what his connections are. He was too dumb to do anything. So back to the symbols on the back of the dollar bill. This side section was just getting a sense of, well, who understands these symbols? And you can only understand who understands these symbols if you understand that groups and interests rule the world away from who you think rules the world and runs things. That's the only way to understand these symbols. So, in summary, again, the symbols on the back of the dollar bill are called highly occult. They're highly occult in nature with ancient origins. That just means somebody else knows the meaning and you don't. The symbols are there on the back of the dollar bill for them, for these control groups that are discussed here. It's there for them. It's not there for you. They seek energy from it, which most people feed them freely. Remember again, money is this 3D world's representation of energy. Money represents energy. Energy is power, but it has no material form. It has no tangible substance. You can't drop it on your foot like a brick. A person with money doesn't need to expend energy because they have that energy through money. They give the money. In this world, energy is exchanged for money, and money is exchanged for energy. Money essentially stores energy. And when the average person wants money, there has to be an outflow of energy, just like we covered. So if there's a bunch of creepy symbols in the back of the dollar bill and things that we truly don't understand, wouldn't you think that those symbols are in some way related to harnessing the energy that money stores? Is that so? Just because it doesn't fit in between the bookends of a known understanding, it can't possibly be true? And I'm not talking to you guys generally. I'm talking to the few people that might stumble upon this. Well, I know everything. And just because it doesn't fit in my bookends of known reality and understanding, well, that can't be. Well, then explain what it is then. We know money's role to store energy. We've talked about that. It's just a logical conclusion or a logical assumption, if you have an open mind, that the symbols on the back help facilitate that, if you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. Guys, I keep doing that. That's from Rush Hour, with Jackie Chan. Chris Tucker, I guess is his name. Rush Hour 1 and 2, I think he says that. Now, Confucius said, "Signs and symbols rule the world, not words or laws." Confucius. Signs and symbols rule the world, not words or laws. So in summarizing the dollar bill section, please understand, like we said, secret societies and the mystery schools, whatever you want to call them, they love symbolism. They love signs and symbols. Any, quote, wise man would tell you the truth of this world is hidden in plain sight. It's there in symbols. Confucius was probably pretty smart, right? Probably smarter than the average person that goes to the mall. You think Confucius saying signs and symbols rule the world? I think he just made that up for no reason? You think Confucius was just kidding around? That quote is literal. Every single power structure back through ancient Egypt and ancient Babylon hid meaning and universal truths in symbols, and they literally took power from their use. They didn't hide the meaning in the symbols so they would lose the understanding. Certain groups had the understanding, still have the understanding. The masses don't have the understanding. They put the knowledge in symbols so they understand it. And dummies like you and I don't. They learn to draw power using symbols. Yes, literal power. Somebody rolling their eyes, that sounds like magic. Yes, it is. Roll your eyes if you want. They shape reality using symbols. Laugh if you want. Other symbols are meant for your subconscious to interpret. Parts of you that you don't even realize. Parts that aren't the thinking part of the brain. It goes right past the thinking part of the brain, many symbols, right to the subconscious and parts of you that run in the background. Okay? The frontal cortex of most people that's clogged with bong resin can't interpret the symbol, but your subconscious, in many cases or in all cases, when it's these incredibly powerful ancient symbols, it can interpret the symbol. They put the symbols that empower their astrology on T-shirts. The Nike swoosh. They put it all over T-shirts, and we dummies actually pay money to wear it to facilitate their symbol. Nike should be paying whoever wears the giant swoosh of Mercury. Nike should be paying them if you put it on your chest and parade it all over the place. Beyond the free advertising, they should pay you just for the advertising. But nevertheless, there's power in that symbol. It's just not a pretty picture somebody drew up. But 99.99% of everybody you run into thinks that swoosh is just a pretty picture. It's something that was cool, something that Phil Knight thought was cool. And, the guy that sketched out the swoosh gave it to Phil Knight, and then it was the same guy that sold him a bag of pot. And Phil Knight said, "Oh, I'm going to use this as my logo." It's just cool. It has no real meaning other than, oh yeah, Hermes had the winged shoes and wings on the feet, and then Nike's just going to use that because that'll show athletes how fast they can become. That's all it is. Yeah, just go back and watch your basketball. And somebody from their bathtub will scream out at me and say, fine. Confucius talked about the importance of symbols. Yeah, so what? When'd he live? That bastard lived like 1,000 years ago. So maybe what he said did apply at some point. Maybe dragons really did exist, but why the heck would it be applicable now? World's different. Ah, but is it, Captain Ogren? Is it that different? Can I offer you whiskey? Have you seen the 10-story penis just a few blocks from the White House? Yeah, there's a 10-story penis just a few blocks from the White House. I'm not talking about like a fan-fed, air inflatable thing in front of a Bill Clinton sex shop, like these dancing things that are out front of cell phone stores. I'm not talking a temporary thing. I'm talking about something that's somewhat permanent. I'm talking about a 10-story dick called the Washington Monument with dimensions that code the 666. It's hardcore occult symbolism. It's not a pretty sculpture with a neat shape. The common man vacations in Washington, D.C. and goes up into the Washington Monument penis like semen and has no idea what the heck it is or what's really going on, what it all means or what he's going up into. The tourists are climbing up inside a giant phallus. A 5-second Google search. This isn't where I'm going to scream at you not to use official sources. Go use official sources. The obelisk, with a 5-second Google search, you can see the obelisk represents the phallus in Egyptian antiquity, the penis, the fertility symbol. And this is exactly what the Washington Monument is. Interesting. We have the Egyptian obelisk on the Washington Mall. Absolute ancient Egyptian origins, the phallus, fertility, the penis. Then we have the Egyptian pyramid on the back of the dollar, from Egypt to Egypt. And somebody screaming out from their bathtub, you must be mistaken. No, you must. There must be some other meaning. There must be another reason for the shape of the obelisk. Maybe it's like a good luck charm or something. It's not just, it might be a phallus from ancient Egypt, but there's another meaning. No, it don't mean good fortune. There is no other interpretation for the obelisk. There are no other interpretations, none but a dick. More specifically, it's the dick of the Egyptian god Osiris, or maybe Osiris? Osiris? Oh, serious? You cannot be serious? Is that like the candy bar O. Henry? In legend, Osiris got the little head lopped off, and the Humpty Dumpty of Isis couldn't put it back together again, or couldn't put all of them back together again and include the phallus. The phallus was still lost. Well, not until the Washington Monument on the Washington Mall. There it is, the penis of Osiris. Even if there were other possible interpretations, knowing just this general shape, the shape of the obelisk, knowing what it represents for thousands of years, why on earth would they craft a 10-story one of those? Okay, if that's not exactly what they intended. Of course, the dick is what they intended. They love the dick. Groups of dummies vacation around the Washington Mall, and from their tour buses, they
look at all the pretty architecture. Oh, yeah, neat. Look at all the pretty pictures and architecture.
They're called, by these groups and societies we discussed, they're called the profane. Okay? It's not really a term of respect. It's like the great unwashed. The group who built the dick on the National Mall are generally called the initiated, the illuminated, the elite. They're called the initiates, the adepts. Bill Cooper called them the priest class. We're called NASCAR fans. We're done giving them these titles, okay? But we do need a better name than George Bush creatures. Unless you think all these secret societies are just guys playing dress up for an excuse to drink scotch away from their wives, there is occult knowledge in the ancient texts that has been passed down, things about how reality works that certain people in certain groups know that you and I don't. Very often, some of that knowledge comes out through the symbolism, and they know there's no way the normal guy or girl in the street will ever be able to interpret the symbol or how the symbol can be used in a powerful way. There are things certain people know that 99.999 or whatever percent of the people walking down the street will never know. Regarding that strange eye that's staring at you, the back of the dollar bill, you know, like we said, once was good, they do hijack. The original meaning is stolen, converted, and perverted over time. They generally propagate with their symbols what they intend, pushing the message that they want, that the people can no longer decide for themselves. They push the message on people subconsciously through their symbols. Now, there's a reason every movie star and recording artist, even Tom Brady, like I said, have posed with pictures covering the one eye. They cover the right eye with their hand or whatever. There's a reason for this. It's not somebody barking out at me, well, Matt, these celebrities are involved in thousands of pictures, and there's only so many ways you can take a picture. Eventually, they're going to cover the eye. If you want to believe that, fine. There's a reason major cities around the world have, almost all major cities around the world have some sort of obelisk or the phallus or a giant statue or sculptural rendering of a cube. And many big cities now have, relating back to the eye, they have the Ferris wheel. The one in London is even called the London Eye. Okay? Is this an idiot actually relating Ferris wheels and just having fun with the eye symbolism on the back of the dollar bill? Yeah, I am. Okay? It's not just there to be a fun amusement ride. Look at the London Eye. It's called the London Eye. Okay? I'm equating it to an eye. You're calling me crazy. And it's called the London Eye. But forget that. There's no way the rich and powerful snobs of London would have allowed a giant Ferris wheel to be built along the Thames, a few blocks from, say, 600 and 800-year-old buildings, blocks from Big Ben, in the same picture when you take a picture from the air. Look, kids, Parliament. I mean, they would never have allowed it. But see, the people living in these 600 or 800-year-old buildings are the people who work in these 600 to 800-year buildings and all the beautiful old architecture of London. They believe they have a lot of clout and a lot of power. The person on the street would think they have a lot of clout and a lot of power. Oh, this person is a lawyer and they make £550,000, which is $700,000 a year. And this person has inherited wealth and they're worth £40 million or $60 million. The influence of the people that live and work down there, if they didn't want the eye there, Matt, they would have blocked it. They know lawyers and judges. No, I assure you, those people did not want a gigantic Ferris wheel scarring their beautiful ancient city. I assure you, they tried to block it, people that believe they have real power and influence, until they came up against the real power of influence, things that they'll never see, things that they'll never be able to meet or touch, that if they want to jam a giant Ferris wheel through because they want to continue to push the eye symbolism, they're going to jam a giant Ferris wheel through wherever they will like. The same type of power and influence that could build something like CERN, something that goes so many miles underground and extends from France all the way into Switzerland. How do you build that with the permitting and the red tape of the EU? Well, there are groups that don't need permitting. There are groups that don't need to appeal or petition any government for the permission to dig. There's likely groups that people that will never have a passport because they will never need a passport, if you understand what I'm saying. So these Ferris wheels propagate the eye, but for those who care to notice, everything they do pushes forth the eye. I got an advertisement the other day to switch cell phone carriers, and persons popping up covering their eye, movie trailers. It's all over the place. I believe I started watching, what was that, Queen's Gambit? And right in the first scene, her hair hangs over the right eye, all intentional right eye symbolism. If you really start to look for it, it's everywhere, all over the place. And the point is, does this relate to the eye on the back of the dollar bill? Of course it does. Well, what exactly does it mean, Matt? Exactly. I don't know. Continue to ponder that and look at that. Well, Matt, this YouTube truther channel knows exactly what it is. Well, then I'm telling you, then they don't know much of anything. And to be that arrogant and bold to say they know exactly, you should abandon them as soon as you can. The eye symbolism in ancient cultures like India and Egypt, generally a good thing about enlightenment, being able to see the world clearly, connect to the divine self through one's third eye. It's all a good thing. Third eye is another name for the pineal gland in the brain, a connection potentially to higher self, connection to the spiritual aspect of yourself, the part not trapped in this 3D reality. A practice of ancient cultures was, I mean, it still should be, but I think they were more attuned to this in ancient cultures to try to open up the pineal gland or open up the third eye so one can finally see reality clearly. Now, what exactly this means is complicated and certainly don't have firsthand knowledge and outside the scope here. But what wondrous abilities seeing with the third eye affords a human being is beyond our scope, but it's real. There's just too many people that have documented it over a long, long period of time. It's for real. Let's just say that at minimum, if one can tap into what is called the third eye related to the pineal gland, one can see a lot, but definitely see right through the ridiculous matrix code that this world tries to present us. Like Superman seeing through the walls. The ruse of this reality is a joke to someone who has, quote, opened up their third eye. Maybe that's why we see it as a joke, not that we're fully there, but maybe we're starting to develop what's called the third eye or uncalcify the third eye or at least tapping into some of its abilities. Where somebody that has never tapped into anything at all called the third eye, they see nothing. Is this what we call an NPC, even if they're not really an NPC? At best, though that's at worst, that we starting to understand. At best, some say the pineal gland is a direct connection to, for only could be described as the divine, or a direct connection to what some would call God. This isn't just legend and lore and fun stuff to talk about unless you think hundreds of the smartest people who have ever lived over the past 5,000 years are just spewing nonsense when talking about the power of the third eye. Okay? It's a lost perception, lost on the modern human being. Okay? Not all of them that talked about it were just smoking the same peyote. How unfortunate. All the great philosophers, shamans, mystics who lived all over the world through the last few millennia wasted their time on talking about these types of powers and the power of perception through the third eye. All those poor devils would have had to do is watch Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room on CNN to understand the world. It's a damn shame they wasted all that time and didn't have CNN. The, quote, puppet masters of this world are all about hiding the power that you and I possess and making each generation that comes after us dumber and dumber. Each generation gets dumber and dumber because the true power inside real people is being removed and hidden. So much so, nobody looks for any sort of power inside them today. Even the Vatican has a big sculpture of a pine cone in their scandal-ridden yard. The Vatican, a big pine cone in their scandal-ridden yard. Either the Pope loves evergreen trees, or they also carry this ancient, quote, occult knowledge of the third eye. Occult means hidden, of course. Pine cone, pineal gland, potentially, or likely. The word occult, listen to this, also relates to the eye through the word oculus. Occult oculus. Cataract patients go and get an ocular lens implant in order to see again, to correct their vision. An ocular lens implant sounds an awful lot like occult. What do you think is the temperature-controlled underground Vatican Library? What do you think's in the Vatican Library, where Robert Langdon, in the second one, Angels and Demons, they were afraid to even take a page out of the Vatican Library? Well, they were trying to save the Vatican from being blowed up by an antimatter explosion. You would think stealing a page would be okay in that situation, but it was, to me, it's a truth drop to tell you how valuable the knowledge in something like the Vatican Library is. I mean, what do you think's in there? The knowledge of how the world really works, reality buttons and levers. We think it is Archie and Jughead comics. Why doesn't the Catholic Church and the Vatican, why doesn't that loving organization share its wonders with regular people? Or for that matter, why doesn't it share what's in there with other Catholics? We can't check those books out, can we? The famous Egyptian representation of the Eye of Horus that Katy Perry corrupted takes the same shape as the pineal gland in the brain when viewed in a certain way. Eye of Horus, Katy Perry corruption. That's basically a brain cross-section. Pineal gland is in there, all by design, all ancient symbols that were probably once good, to cross-section the pineal gland. Michelangelo's depiction on the Sistine Chapel, or the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, depiction of God and Adam. God reaches out to Adam, the hands are not quite touching. This is also an expression of the pineal light. Take a close look at that image on the Sistine ceiling the next time you're there. You go all the time. Check it out. God is inside what's clearly a brain, reaching out, but not quite touching Adam. It's absolutely a brain. The shape's no coincidence. Adam's just a few inches away from touching God. Close, but removed. Close, but removed from enlightenment, or removed from opening his third eye, or accessing the pineal gland. He's not connected to God yet, as mankind has been cut off and disconnected from the divine. It shows God, or the divine, coming through the mind. Literally, that's what it shows in the Sistine Chapel, because it's a cross-section of the brain coming through the mind, trying to reach Adam's avatar, but not quite being able to connect with him. That's our exact situation in metaphor. Could only touch fingers and engage their wonder twin powers. The George Bush creatures would soil themselves if we ever came into our own power. Now, there's no coincidence in this symbolism, or this type of symbolism, but 99.999 or whatever percent on the street just think it's pretty pictures that were painted on the ceiling that Robin Williams talked about in the movie Good Will Hunting. So you're just a kid. You've never been in that beautiful church and smelled what the inside of the Sistine Chapel looked like. I was up all night drinking until I realized you're just a kid. Most people think that maybe God, in that depiction, maybe God was leaning over ever so close to Adam, or trying to touch Adam atop the Sistine Chapel to actually award him with a much-needed enhancement. If you've seen that picture of Adam, he's in need of a much-needed enhancement called the Magic Johnson. Take a look at that thing that Adam is sporting in that painting sometime. Look, me included, we've all experienced shrinkage. But that's the smallest pecker ever depicted by a Renaissance master. I mean, look at that little thing. Did Michelangelo perhaps run out of flesh-colored paint, and thus Adam came up a little short? Pineal, or abilities related to that, is even expressed in the Bible. Genesis 32:30. 32:30, Genesis KJV. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Peniel is how it's spelled in Genesis 32:30 KJV. Well, of course it's referring to pineal gland and what we've been talking about. So blow the importance of understanding the pineal gland off if you want to. As usual, today's controllers take what was once a divine thing and a beautiful thing and a great thing and things that probably all humans knew thousands of years ago, and they hijack it and they take it away from us and they remove our power because they want to shape reality into their own dark place and bring forth their own perverted version of how human beings should live, which is obviously taking place right now. To begin to summarize and wrap up this presentation, if you really tune yourself into noticing, the presentation of the eye in this world, this reality, this society is everywhere. And it literally is everywhere. It's pushed so hard by this control structure, it's very hard to understand even what they get out of pushing it so hard. It's unnatural. The London Eye, for example, we talked about, it's not just a Ferris wheel that end up looking like an eye. They designed a gigantic eye to look over London, and they disguised it in a Ferris wheel. It's just the opposite of what you would think. They intended to build a giant eye over London, and they used a Ferris wheel to cloak, or as a cover story, to do that, so the profane don't catch on, and they would think presentations like this are just for the insane. By the way, the last capsule of the London Eye is number 33. Anybody surprised? Me neither. And number 13 has been skipped. Oh, just because they're superstitious. No, it's all part of the strange presentation that brings them power. The CBS logo, it's an occulted eye. It's all over the place in logos. It even pops up in Nickelodeon for kids. How sick is that? How was Sauron depicted in Lord of the Rings? A fiery red eye looking over everything. Crystal ball is an eye that has magical properties. The first ceremony to honor the dead just months after 9/11. The first ceremony. Ground Zero, it's all rubble still. It's a gigantic eye that was formed by people walking around a central position to, I don't know if they were joining hands, but it formed the shape of an eye to honor the dead. How sick is that? All on purpose. Okay? It's not a coincidence. Nothing, especially in terms of the eye presentation, is a coincidence. Massive New Year's Eve celebration in Sydney years ago depicted a glowing eye. There's thousands of these examples. And right down to where you would never think to look. And I don't have time to go over the 1,000. There are thousands, but I'll just give you one here. Rocky 1, like 78 or 79, 1979. Apollo Creed looking through that book to see who he would fight, who he selected Rocky. He says, look at here, the Italian Stallion. He goes out of his way to emphasize. He doesn't say the Italian Stallion. I love the name. He says, it's the name. It's all about the name. The Italian Stallion, I. You think I'm crazy for saying that? You don't know how the world works? I could be wrong. Do I know for sure that's exactly what was intended in the movie Rocky? No, but I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. But to laugh at that and say that's not how they do business, you don't understand how the world works. John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. Enough said. When you start to notice, and you've set your mind to noticing, you'll begin to see the eye everywhere. Okay? The Phantom of the Opera I've talked about recently, the 25th anniversary edition from Royal Albert Hall. The eye is a jewel on Christine's dress. It's everywhere. They'd put the eye on a taco shell if they could get away with it, which, because the masses don't notice anything, they probably could. Why do you think celebrities are called stars? It's all part of a message inside of a message. They must hide the big things in life, and they must hide them in plain sight, which means to the masses, it's completely hidden, but to anybody that has a certain way of looking at things, it's not hidden at all. It's hidden in plain sight. And here's an interesting spin on this, and again, anything that's strange and crazy is probably closer to the truth than anything that appears normal. It seems like, again, we give this controlling faction so much credit and they carry the ancient knowledge and they have all the answers. No, anything's on the table. It's possible these people we call controllers and the George Bush creatures, we've speculated before, they're not the same incarnation as you and I. They're different. They're in the same body, but their access to soul or spirit, they're not the same as you and I. We've talked about that before. In our we don't know for sure, but it's pretty likely in how they operate. But it's possible this group may not even have access to the true divine sight, divine seeing, or the illumination that they put forth that we believe they have. Maybe if many of us or millions of us believe they have this illumination, then we bring that into reality for them. They might not have any of this that we have as immortal beings connected to spirit or connected to the bridge out of here. It's possible the eye on the back of the dollar bill is not even about them or where they are in the pyramid. It might be about you and where you really are or what you could really be. One of these assholes' main roles in being assholes is, I don't know why they do this or how they have to do this or contractually if they have to do this, they have to show you who you really are. Think about that. Think about that. Put it in plain sight. Show you who you really are. Put it right on the back of the dollar bill. And people just pass it around, try to buy hot dogs and drugs and things. And the most powerful message to you could be on the back of the dollar bill. And then they would want it misinterpreted. They would want to say, oh, these Illuminati have all this knowledge and sight. I mean, saying, no, they don't have it at all. You potentially have it, and you can possess it. If anybody holding the dollar bill as a real human could come to this realization of who they really are. Don't put that off the table. That's probably likely. All right, we'll close with a mock conversation between the demon creature FDR and his Secretary of Agriculture, the two that supposedly first decided to put the Great Seal of the United States on the back of the dollar. This is just a fun exercise, but I wouldn't present it if I didn't think there was a tiny bit of truth in it. Do I think anything really went down this way? No, but you'll understand why I'm presenting it, and it's a fun way to close. So, is this a real conversation that took place in 1934 between President creature FDR, Franklin Delano, whatever that is, Roosevelt, and his Treasury Secretary? They always assign the Great Seal of the United States and the decision to put it on the back of the dollar bill with his Treasury Secretary too, which is there's something to that as well. Well, if somebody, if FDR signed off on it, isn't that all that matters? Why does the Treasury Secretary always get pulled into? There's something to that. Something to that. I can't quite, a truth in it I can't quite put my finger on, but who cares? Okay, let's have fun with it. We'll start with FDR talking to his Treasury Secretary. Henry, come in here, Henry. Yes, Henry, sit down. We're really going to start screwing with these proletariat idiots now, Henry, to a level they've never seen before in human history. We're going to screw with these great unwashed like they've never seen before. Well, we're planning a world war soon, as you know. And if we do that, karma says that we must give something back. The way this reality works, we take, but we must give them something back for those, or the few of them, the few idiots that have the power or the ability to see what we're giving back in return.
Oh, very good, sir. What will we give them back, Mr. President, as we screw them?
Let's put the most important occult knowledge in the history of existence on something that they look at every day. They won't even notice the symbolism right in their face all day long. Henry, go get the Great Seal of the United States, once a secret, and put the fucking thing on the back of the dollar bill for the assholes to look at every day. The dumb sons of bitches won't even notice the truth of this world is in their hands every day as they purchase their dildos. Show the proles exactly how society works on the back of the dollar using the pyramid. Show them their potential, what they really are spiritually as they pay for hookers. Write New World Order in Latin to honor Rome, and they won't even notice. Write Honor Our Endeavors in Latin, and they will honor our great work every day as reality creating proletariats passing their paper money around between themselves, creating energy. Encode the number 13, Henry, everywhere you can. Put it in absolutely everything, and the dumb bastards will think it just relates to the 13 colonies. We'll even make some shit up about goddesses that have no meaning, like Columbia. Columbia, these assholes believe that.
Well, sir, what if they research these things, Mr. President? We won't have Google controlling all the information for another 60 years. What do we do if they research it?
Ah, good point, Henry. When the very few who can think for themselves, get the inkling to look into what the symbols mean, have the breadcrumbs lead them to our fake bullshit, presented in mainstream reference books, like Encyclopedia Britannica and World Book Encyclopedia.
Very good, sir. What do you want it to say, sir? This fake bullshit that we'll plant and they're meant to find.
Have the Ministry of Information write some crap up about the eye representing something called, I just pulled it out of my ass right now, call it the Eye of Providence. Tell the sons of bitches that God is watching over America's manifest destiny.
Very good, sir, but why would they believe that?
Because you're going to put in all caps on the back of the dollar, "In God We Trust." That will cement these bullshit stories for those that want to believe that their government is just looking out for them. These poor bastards. And guys, we'll close with this. If there's something very symbolic related to anything associated with the federal government, the Washington, D.C., as you do a tour, or the dollar bill, or the statue on top of the Statue of Freedom on top of the Capitol building. In every case, I don't think this rule can ever be broken. In every case, what the official source says the symbol is bullshit. In every case. So, the goddess of freedom on top of the Capitol building, and no, it's 179.5 degrees different from what the official sources say. If somebody wants to scream out it's Persephone or some other ancient goddess that they're worshiping, that has so much more merit than whatever you'll find in Wikipedia. Bullshit about Eye of Providence and related to the Manifest Destiny story. What is the Washington Monument? Even the temple of the Lincoln Memorial, as he has both hands over on each side of the fascia, the ancient Roman symbol for fascism. I'll say it one last time to close. In every single case, the official story of what something means associated with the symbolism of D.C. or the symbolism of the federal government is 179.5 degrees. I'm going to give him a half degree of benefit of the doubt. I'm not going 180. 179.5 degree lie. Or the truth lies that far away from what Wiki Effenpedia presents. Thanks for listening.